Hi guys, well, welcome class 3, and we've got a busy night tonight, so I'm going to rush through a lot of formalities. Okay, so let's go to our curriculum, and as you can see, we're going to do a thing called form and volume. Basically, it's a bouncing ball. It's a new exercise, and it's a very good exercise. It's in theory, it's very simple. But in practice, you've got a lot of things to think about to pull it off really well. But we're going to do that tonight. And it's going to include some of the things we've already done and some new things. But let's move on because I want to save time. Okay. So squash and stretch, bouncing ball setup. So what this is I want to spend a separate moment, well, longer than a moment, but I want a separate video just showing you how to set up your assignment for this week. You'll find that in the classroom, I've put a file in there, a guide file that you need to download and import into the program, as I'm going to explain now. And you're going to have to decide how you're going to create your bouncing ball design, whether you do it outside of the program or inside the program. And when I say program, I mean Rough Animator, okay? So I'm going to play this video now. It will tell you how to set up. It's not about how to animate. It's about to set up. And then we'll come back after this and move on, okay? So here we go. Okay, everyone. So this week we're going to start a new project. It's called Bouncing Ball, and we're going to learn certain things like squash and stretch, and we're going to go over again the slow in and slow out thing we did in the previous assignment, and we're going to do it in a slightly different way. Now, I've got my own approach to it, which some of you can do and some of you can't, but I'm going to show you how to set up. This little demo is about setting up the scene before we start animating. I'll do a separate animation demo in a minute, but this is the setting up. So if you want to see what I'm going to do, this is what the final outcome looks like. Okay, so you can see I've jazzed it up a lot. I've made it an eyeball because I thought that would kind of be weird and surreal, but it's fun. It's still a bouncing ball. And also I put a background to it. Those processes are simple. I created them all outside of this program. I created them in Photoshop, in fact, and created PNG files or a JPEG file of each, and I'll show you that in a minute, because I wanted to import artwork into the program, into Rough Animator, and work with it there. However, I recognize that some of you may not be able to do that. You may not have Photoshop, or you may not be able to create a PNG file, and etc, etc. So I want to show you how you can work in the program and set up in the same way, but just working totally in Rough Animator. Okay, so we've set up a new screen, and you can see here, I'm calling it Demo 1 Setup, 24 frames per second, 1920 by 1080 pixels, all right? Basically, that's what we have here. And the first thing I want to do is import my background. So I'm going to go up to the timeline. Now, I'm showing you how to import a background the way I did it. But remember, you can draw within the program your own background. So assuming that you don't have a file to import, and you can import a photograph, a piece of artwork, anything you like, or you can draw something in the program. But let's assume you want to import something. Even if it's a photograph you got off Google Images or something, you can work with that too. So I'm going to click on background, frame 1 on background. I'm going to go up to File, Import Images, and I'm going to select my background. I've got a folder called Eyeball Art here, and here's my background. BG means background for me. And I'm going to click on it and hit open. All right, and it comes kind of colored and grayed down or brown, or it's got a red tone to it. Don't worry about it. When you change layers, it's going to appear strong. But what I notice is that although I've created the artwork the right size, 1920 by 1080, in my screen I'm using to demo here, it's being cropped off around the edges. All right, so to go and reduce the screen to a size you're comfortable with, it defaults to, if you look up at the tool window up in the top left hand corner here, you can see it defaults to 100%. Now if you're 100%, or rather if your screen is smaller than the 100% of your artwork like it is here, you can go to 100%, click on this down menu and go to 75%. And here you'll see now that you can see the complete artwork right to the edges. See these little boxes and the outer lines? That's your screen size, all right? And at the moment we're viewing it at 75%, but we're not actually making it 75%. It's just on the screen we're viewing it that way. And by the way, I'm doing this demo on my desktop again, because with the desktop you can see my cursor moving, whereas if I work on my iPad, which I'll start doing next week, when you've seen everything I'm doing with the cursor, next week I'll use my iPad. This week I'm doing it on the desktop so you can see everything. All right, so now we have our background. You can, as I said, you can import any image you want to create a background, as long as you've got a position for bouncing where the ball bounces and an area in the sky for it to go up and down from, okay, to and from. So that gives us that level. So now I'm going to go up to this layer 1 up here. If you look above on the timeline here, I'm going to click on frame 1, and you'll see two things happen. One is the background color becomes pure again because it's behind the layer we're working on. And it also gives you the option to rename it. So I'm going to rename it ball and hit return. And now what I can do is import the ball from my file. Now I was going to show you how to hand draw all this. I'll do that in a minute, but let me show you my way of working with pre-created images outside of Rough Animator. So I'm going to go to import image again, and I'm going to go to this eyeball file. Now this is a PNG file. If I hit open, I'm not sure if you can see that, but it's a PNG file. And that means, remember, it's got this red effect over it because I'm selecting at the moment, working with it. But the PNG file, actually, the artwork of the eyeball is all in color. It's all solid color. But around it, this gray area around it is transparent. PNG allows you to use transparent backgrounds. You might not be able to do that yourself. And if you can't, then you can work in the program, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. But let's assume that you can do it. And you're going to do what I did, which was create artwork outside the program. I used Photoshop to do all this, and created a transparent background with a solid colored eyeball like this. And what I'm going to do is, because I need to do one more thing to make this work. So I'm going to go up and go to modify layers on the timeline here, and I'm going to add an empty layer. And I'm going to name that layer guide, and I'll explain in a minute what that means, but I'm calling it guide. And then what I'm going to do is select that frame. I'm going to go to file, import image, and you'll see in here I've got my BB bouncing ball field guide JPEG. I'm going to click on that, hit open, and there you'll see the action guide. Now the guide here has several things that you need to note. So you can see a vertical line here. That's what we call our path of action. Our bouncing ball is just going to bounce up and down vertically like this, and then it's going to hit this horizontal line which represents the ground, where it will bounce from, to and from, up and down like that. So the guide gives us the path of action coming down and the ground line where the ball hits. It also shows us the top position of the ball. When the ball's up in the air, it's a perfect ball shape. But when it hits the ground, assuming, and I'm telling you, we're working with a ball that's a rubbery ball, it's bendable, but it's a solid ground line. So when the ball hits the ground, it's going to squash. Now I'm going to talk about all this in a minute when we do the animation demo, but for setting up, the main thing you want to know is this ball position here, the size and position of the ball. Now, the problem we've got, of course, is that this is on top of our ball and our background, so we can't see anything with those. So you're going to need to move this down. So what I'm going to do is go to my guide layer in the timeline above here. I'm going to click on this up and down button, and I'm going to drag it down to there. Okay, so now I have the ball on top of the guide. All right, the ball is on the top layer of the guide. The guide's the guide's still obscuring the background, but at least I can see the size of the ball that I have right now, and if it didn't obscure the guide, it would show me the size of the ball I need it to be. So in order to see the guide, I'm going to take this ball layer, and I'm going to go to the left of it up here, and I'm going to drag it down to make it transparent. See, it's going transparent as I do that. That allows me to see the guide through the ball. So then I'm going to go to the lasso tool. I'm going to select the whole ball like this, and then that gives me handles here to shrink and move the ball. There we go. All right, so now it should, there we go. We're more in business now. So what I'm doing, basically, I'm shaping the ball so that it roughly, or better still, accurately fits the guide I've given it. So height-wise, that's in a perfect position. So we now just got to deal with the width of it. And width-wise, you don't have to be absolutely perfect, but try and get it as close as you can, okay? And if I just slide it over, I want to slide it over. See, the one thing I did with the eyeball, see there's a little white dot in the middle there? I want it to line up with my path of action. So I want to, even though it's not matching the outside of my ball, I know it's the right size. I want to get that little white dot, which is the center of the eyeball, in there. Now, when I've got the animation, I'm going to use that little white dot to line up and down with this path of action as we animate, and you'll see that happening in a minute. But when I've finished, I can go back and just black out that little white dot so we don't see it in the animation. But for now, I'm using it just to line up. It doesn't matter if your ball doesn't exactly match your guide, the guide one I've given you. It's okay, because I hand drew that guide one, but you may have done a perfect circle, and we'll talk about how to do that in the program in a minute. But bottom line is, I've made the ball more or less the same size as the guide, and I've lined up the center of the artwork ball with the path of action. See that around there? So I'm going to click off, and now I'm going to resume 100% on the ball, and you can see now that it's pretty much in the right position. If I now go to the guide and reduce that down to 0%, transparency, or 0 view, then you can see that now my ball and the background is in the right position. But I'm going to increase the guide so we can see. We can also see that the ground line where it hits the ground is nicely situated on the grass down below. So in other words, we're ready to go. If I remove, I'm not going to remove the guide, but when I remove the guide and I finish my animation and export it to a video, you'll see we've got this nice ball and we've got the background all working together, and export it to video, it's going to look great. But while we're working, we want to see that guide in place. So we're going to work with it like that. Okay. All right. So that basically gives you the setup if you're creating artwork outside of the program and you're going to import it in. Now you may not be able to do that, so let me show you how you're going to do it without that. So let's say we now have our guide. You're going to import your guide. I've shown you how to do that. So create your ball level above it like this. All right, you've done exactly the same as I've done. But this time you're going to use the drawing tool. So there's two ways of using a drawing tool. I'm going up to this tool up here, top left. The paintbrush is the drawing tool. Remember, you can change the size of the brush here. I'm going to keep it at 14 pixels, but you can do it any size you want. Opacity 100% right now. Ignore flow and spacing, etc. But basically, we're drawing. All right, so what you can do is on your ball layer with your drawing tool selected, pick the black pencil, so we got a nice black line so you can see it, and I'm gonna trace it as best I can. All right, and this is for all you guys who are working within the program only. It's a bit wobbly, I'm afraid, because I'm sitting in an awkward position, so I can demo this for you. But basically what I'm doing, I've created the outline of the ball. I want to show you another thing. With the drawing tool selected, you can go to the tools options here and click on this box and go to a straight line. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the straight line tool to create the center cross in my box or in the ball. And then I'm going to just set it back to hand drawing again, because I want to basically, let's just say it's a face like we've done before. Smiley face, smiley mouth. Very crudely done, but that's it. And let's say you want a red ball, so I'm going to select red, going to go to the paint bucket tool, click in the middle, and there we have a red ball. All right, so that's created our ball, and now all we've got to do is create a background layer. So remember, we don't want to use mine, so I'm ignoring that. So I'm going to go up here to modify layers. I'm going to add an empty layer, and we're going to call this drawn background. Drawn BG. And all this means is I'm just, for the sake of the demo, and you can do your own way, I'm going to create a kind of undulating horizon line. You may want to put, you know, sun in the sky. I'm really doing this crudely, guys, so you don't have to copy me, but I'm just giving you an idea for creating your background. All right, so we'll put the sun in the sky like that. If you want to put a tree in, you can. Really, all you're doing is creating a context for what your bouncing ball is going to be working. It could be interior, exterior, could be anywhere you like. But there you go. We can put another tree in if you like. But I'm really just very quickly showing you that, fill the gaps. We can very quickly create a background. This is very crude, sorry guys, but I want to show you quickly. Oh, so now see that happen? It's because I've got a gap in the line down here on this tree trunk. So I'm going to hit the undo button. Going to go back to my drawing tool, pick black, make sure that gap is filled in there. Make sure I haven't got any others. Right, now I'm going to go back to, can't remember what color it was, but let's say, yep, I got the right one. And let's undo button, I hit the line. Go inside the line, Tony, and fill the tree. Oh, that one's got a gap in it as well. So couldn't see that one. So I'm going to undo, go back to my black line here. Maybe it's just there, there's a gap. Paint pot tool. Yeah, there we go. Now maybe we want a nice blue sky, so we'll go pale blue for the sky. There we are. And we want a dark green for the ground. So let's pick a dark green for the ground. And a bright yellow sun. Okay. And there's our background. So that if you want to work in the program, you can draw in your own background. Again, we've got the drawn background on the layer above the ball. So we can click on this up and down button next to the drawn background layer and drag it down, put it there, and there's our ball in the ground. So that's how you set up using your guide and the drawing tools in Rough Animator to create your ball layer and your drawn background layer. Okay? And you can do whatever you like as long as you have a perfectly circular ball and match my guideline. Remember the guide. If I take out the background layer for a minute, you can see the guide. As long as you match my guide, we'll talk about this in a minute. Oh, there's one other thing I wanted to show you. Let me put, I'm going to keep this guide transparent at the moment. I'm going to create another layer. We'll talk about this in a minute, but I'm going to add an empty layer. and I'm going to call it shadow. Now the shadow is what is going to be cast. Now unfortunately I put the sun here, which really means that's the source of light. But let's say it's not there. Let's say the sun is right above the ball. I want to make this really simple for the demo. So I'm going to create a shadow layer. I'm going to select the shadow frame. I'm going to go to the drawing tool. I'm going to go down here to this tool, which is the ellipse tool. I'm going to make sure we're in black for now. And I'm going to create an elliptical area like that that's going to represent the shadow that the sun is creating. And to move it into the right position, because we want it, the shadow, to be covering the ground in the area where the ball is bouncing. So we want the hit point of the ball to be in the middle of our shadow. Click off it, and that gives us our shadow. Now we're going to go into more detail about this later, but this is going to mark the shadow of the ball. Now we could, if you like, go to the ball layer, and this is something you can think about. And I'm going to pick a darker red, and I'm going to go to the drawing tool again, and I'm going to undo. I'm going to go back to this tool here, and I'm going to go to the freehand one, which is that wiggly line at the top, and I'm going to go to the ball, and I'm going to draw a darker line like that. All right, then I'm going to go to the paint pot, and I'm going to fill in that darker line, and that represents the shadow on the ball. So now we have a ball layer. We have a shadow layer under it. Don't worry, it's an outline right now. We'll fill that in later. And then behind it, if we take the guide off, if we strengthen up the background, so we have the ball, the shadow, the ground shadow, and a background. And that's our setup done. All right. So whether you create your ball object and your background outside the program and import it in, or whether you draw your layers inside the program the way I've just shown you, that's the first thing to do. All right. So I'm going to give you some time now to do that. Okay. Squash and stretch, bouncing ball, light and shadow. So I thought we talked about shadow in the previous setting up video, and I wanted to go deeper into that. So that's what I'm going to do now. I want to explain to you just really things. Some of the things are so obvious that you probably don't need to hear them. But sometimes when things are obvious, we don't think about them, and then we go, oh yeah, of course, kind of thing. So I'm just going to do one of those exercises just to explain about light sources and shadows. So here we go. Remember, we set up our, let me just draw very roughly. We set up our bouncing ball here, and we decided we wanted a shadow around here, and we put a little bit of a shadow under the ball like that. All right, so basically what we're doing is we're assuming, and this is too close, but we're assuming that there is a light source. Could be the sun, could be anything. There's a light source above the ball. So that means the top of the ball is being illuminated and the bottom of the ball is in shadow. And notice I've done it on a curve because it's a ball, it's a sphere, and we wouldn't have a straight line across to show the shadow part. The shadow is going to crawl or curve around the ball shape, the sphere of the ball shape. Now, imagine this light source was much higher. I can't show it in the, it's too close at the moment, but imagine it was much higher. And what we're actually going to be seeing is the angle of light coming from the source above, touching the ground, touching the side of the ball there, and very crudely touching the side of the shadow here. Okay, so this is our shadow on the ground. So what it means is that wherever your light source is, and remember this sun or this light source here is really higher above. I just couldn't get it in the screen. Wherever that light source is, it's always going to cast rays of light down onto the top of an object, and where it stops touching that object, which is this point here, tangent point here and the tangent point here, it's only going to touch around the surface it can see and give it light, and everything else is going to be in shadow. All right, so that's what we've done here. We've created that. Now, where the tangents are and where the light source is, there's a projected line going down onto the ground, and in fact there's two, the exterior tangent points of touching the object in question. So this whole area under the ball is going to be in shadow, and when it hits the ground, and because we're looking at it from an angle, it's going to be an elliptical shape on the ground. That's where the shadow is. So as the ball moves, the shadow is going to change shape. So again, let's assume that the light is above here. If I draw the ball closer to the ground, and let's assume it's the same light source above coming from up here somewhere. Whoops. You can see that, let's say this is our shadow line on the guide, or the hit line on the guide. You can see in this case, the shadow is much smaller, all right? Like that. And again, the tangent points will define where the ball is in shadow, bearing in mind it's a sphere. Underside of that line is going to be in shade. All right, if we took the ball way up high, it would cast an even bigger beam and it would go down. Similarly, when we hit the ground with the ball like that, let's say that's our what we called a squash position, remember, and we project our lines down, the shadow, well, that's not very good, undo. The shadow's only going to touch a little bit of the ground here. Now, the other thing to remember is when the ball is on the ground, it's going to cover up part of that shadow. So the shadow is going to go behind the ball like that. Going to go behind. It's not going to be covering the ball. It's going to go behind the ball. So the shadow would look like that. The tangent points mean that the ball is going to be like that. So when we're animating the shadow, which is later, not the first thing we're going to do. First thing we're going to do is animate the ball, all right? But as I show you how to animate the ball, I'm going to be talking about the shadow as well, which is why I wanted to show you how this works. Now, let's take... I kind of made a mistake in saying that here's our landscape. We put a sun up here, do you remember? In my setup guide demo I gave you, and the ball was here. Now, strictly speaking, if we were going to do a shadow using that light source, the sun is going to create tangent points like this. So I'm going to go the outside, the maximum outside of the sun to the maximum outside of the ball. It would actually create a shadow that side of the ball, and this would be the shadow area. And unless there's a mountain or something here where when it hits the mountain you'd see a shadow on the mountain, for instance, but otherwise it will just go off into space, all right? And there would be no ground shadow. But after I showed you the sun there, I said no, we'll make the light source above like this, and we created the downward shadow, all right? Because just purely for the demo reason, I wanted to make it simple for you, all right? But strictly speaking, with the sun there, the shadow would be on this side of the ball, going off in this direction into space, all right? I just wanted to explain that. So when you put shadows on things, always think about where is your light source. First and foremost, where is your light source? And once you have the light source, you know, let's do it again. Let's say your light source is here, and your ball is here, and the ground is here. take that light source, project the lines down to tangents on the ball, and where it hits the ground, or where the ball is going to hit the ground, you would have an elliptical shadow like that. And you would also have, from the tangent points, shading under the ball. So that's really what we're going to be working with this exercise. We're going to have our imaginary light source probably beyond the screen, and it's going to project lines down. Now, you can't project lines down while we're doing the exercise, so you're going to have to, what we call, eyeball this, visually do it, imagine what's going on. So you won't be able to draw these lines in on your animation, but you're going to imagine them. So when you'll set your shadow on the ball around here, and when it's up in the sky, you know that the shadow on the ground is going to be bigger than the shadow area up here. And as the ball comes nearer, the shadow area is going to get smaller until it actually squashes on the ground like this, and in which case the shadow is going to wrap around the ball on the ground. But the shadow is always going to be, the center of the shadow is always going to be at the point where the ball hits the ground. I hope that makes sense. Even when the ball is obscuring it, it's still going to be the same position. All right. So there's just some guides on the shadow side of it. We'll talk about it again when we do the animation demo, because if we work with the shadow and the ball animation at the same time, it's going to be a lot easier than if we just do the ball on its own and then later on go back and do the shadow, because we're going to be adding in-betweens and all kinds of things. It's going to get confusing. So we're going to build both layers together at the same time in the animation demo. All right, so I thought I'd share that with you, and now we'll do the animation demo. Okay, so I hope that was interesting. It's just, as I said before, it's one of those things, it's kind of so obvious, but it's nice to be reminded of it, because we take our knowledge for granted sometimes, and you'll say, yeah, of course it's like that. But it doesn't hurt to remind you in a classroom situation. Okay, final video, but this is the long one. So bouncing ball animation, and let me explain everything about what we're going to do now. Okay, everyone, so now we have our setup done. We understand about our shadows, so we now have our ball layer on the top layer, our shadow layer underneath it, our guide underneath that, transparent, and beneath that is our background. All right, so we're all set up and ready to go. So the first thing I want to do is show you how we're going to space this out, because what we've got to remember when we were talking about slowing in and slowing out, when something's working against gravity, it slows down, and when something's moving with gravity, it speeds up. And in terms of the charts, I want to show you that in terms of the chart. So when the ball here in number 1 drawing, and let's call this number 1. So when we put number 1 here, this is our number 1 key, and we look at the chart, and we can see the chart is coming from 1 down to 9. Now 9 is this squashed ball shape here, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But basically what we're looking at is number 1, the in-betweens are tighter at the beginning, and gradually they get wider apart till it hits number 9. So that means it's starting slow and accelerating on the way down. On the way up, you'll see, which is 9 back to 1 to create the cycled loop. 9 going up, it's a big jump, and I'll explain that in a minute, but then it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, so finally it gets back to number 1. So in other words, when in-betweens are closer together, things go slower, and when they're wider apart, they go faster. So on number 1 through 9, we're starting tight, and then we're accelerating down to the ground. We hit the ground, squash, and bounce up again, and we jump up, and they get slower and slower and slower as they get to the top. So slowing in and slowing out is what happens when a ball is bouncing. It slows in as it goes up, and it slows out as it comes down. It decelerates on the way up and accelerates on the way down. Now, the shadow layer, we'll just reflect all that, but we'll talk about that as we do our keys and our breakdowns and our in-betweens. We'll work on the shadows, but the shadows are really just going to reflect what the ball's doing. They don't have their own chart. So this one, we're just going to juggle it as we go along on its own layer. So the first thing we want to do is select the ball layer, because we're going to work with the eyeball. I want you to go to Add Drawing After, and you'll see we've got a second position here. So I'm going to tone down the background because it's really annoying that actually the reason this is happening is suddenly the charts disappeared. Look, if I scribe from here to here, you'll see the chart's gone. We need that chart to be there, but the chart is only, or the guide is only on the first frame. So what I'm going to do is select that first frame. So you'll see this little stretch arrow here. I'm going to drag it all the way along with the background. We're just going to any distance. We can adjust it later, but what it now means is if we move from frame 1 to frame 2, it doesn't go away. All right, so now I'm going to select frame 2 of the ball, and remember we wanted to add drawing after. Sorry, we wanted to duplicate after. Sorry, that's what I meant to say. So I'm going to delete that drawing. So now what we've done is we've duplicated. So we were at frame 1, we hit duplicate after, and that's created an identical one on frame 2. But that's going to be our number 9. So I'm going to go to the drawing tool, and I'm going to put the onion skin on because I want to see where the number 9 drawing is, or where the number 1 was, so I can put number 9 on. So that gives us our key number 9. And now I'm going to use the lasso tool to select the ball. Going to drag it down. Now see at the bottom we've got our squash position. I'm going to put the bottom of the eyeball on that squash position. I'm also trying to line up the center. See that little dot in the middle? That's to line up with this path of action. I'm going to try and visually line it up, and then I'm going to distort. Actually, if you want to move this will help as well. This pivot point, I'm going to put it on the bottom of the eyeball. I'm going to shift the eyeball to the ground where it hits the ground, and then if I squash down, the bottom position's not going to change. So I'm going to reduce the top down to there, and then I'm going to drag this out to here. Now this is called a squash position. All right, click outside. Now we have the ball in the air on number 1, and we have the ball squashed down in number 9. Now the beauty of creating all your artwork on frame 1 on your number 1 key and then using it after that is that all the drawing distorts all around. So just bear that in mind. Put everything into your frame 1 drawing. Don't leave anything that doesn't need to be drawn later, except remember I put this little white dot in the middle of the eyeball, the pupil. That's to guide on this path of action. All right, so that I'm going to draw over that at the end. When we've finished everything, when we don't need to calculate anymore, we're going to draw to the end. We draw that out at the end. So now we have our drawings 1 and 9. The ball is bouncing up and down. So that gives us the distance our ball is moving. All right. Now on the chart, let's look at where we go next. Remember, the breakdown position is halfway between the 2 key positions. So in this case, because it's in parentheses, it's number 7. So what we need to do is number 7 next. But while we're doing that, I needed to remember one thing, is that we're going to also work on the shadows. Remember, we were going to do the shadows. So to do that as we go along, because trust me, it'll be a lot easier if we do this on as we go along. I'm going to select shadow 1 frame, then I'm going to duplicate after shadow 1 frame, and then I'm going to lasso it, and I'm going to squash it. Let's make sure we can see what we're doing. I'm going to squash that shadow around so that it kind of goes behind, but it's less than before. Because remember, if we project our lines down from the light source to the tangent position, this shadow is actually going to be somewhere. We have to juggle it around. But imagine the light source, the diagonal coming down here. Maybe it's a little bit larger. Let's try and work that out as best we can. But imagine those lines coming down. We're going to find the shadows around about there somewhere. Okay, so you can see now we've got 2 keys for the shadows as well as 2 keys for the eyeballs as well. All right, so now back to the eyeballs. So again, going on to the chart, 1, 9, 7. 7 is the first halfway position, so we're going to create number 7 now. So I'm going to go to the frame 1, add drawing, duplicate after. All right, so I'm going to erase that number 1 from here. I'm going to call it number 7, like that. I'm going to put it in parentheses. It looks confusing because we got the onion skin off. If we take the onion skin off, that's really weird. Bear with me. I'm going to use the eraser tool. Make sure I'm on ball number 7. There we go. I'm going to erase that. So if I turn the onion skin off now, now it's confusing me, guys. We'll work this out. Don't worry. So I'm going to put number 7 on it anyway. And it should be that that ball can then be moved down. Now remember, our number 7 line, if we go across, we're going to line up this little dot in the middle. You can do it visually as long as you're pretty accurate. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but try and get it as close as possible. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the pivot point over that point there. When something's moving down, it doesn't stay in the same shape, all right? Remember, when it hits the ground, it goes into a squash position. Well, on the way down, it does a similar thing, but this time it's a stretch position. If you film a soccer ball going through the air, and it's going really fast through the air, and you freeze the frame of the soccer ball in midair, what you'll see is a kind of blurred, stretched out shape rather than a perfect round ball. Unless it's high-speed photography, the average 24 frames a second camera will create a kind of blur on one frame. When it's moving, it'll look like a solid ball, but if you freeze one frame, it'll look blurred. So we have to replicate that in animation terms. So what we're going to do is, on the way down, we want our ball to be stretched out somewhat. And the faster it's going, the more stretched out it's going to be. So, for instance, I think that's a kind of safe stretched out position. So we have that kind of thing going on. All right. So I'm going to turn that into 7. And I'm just going to thicken this up so that we know it's a parenthesis. So now we have our ball normal size, our ball stretched, and our ball squashed because it's hitting the ground. But you can see we're beginning to get a sense of speed building up there and the ball going down and up. All right. Now let's not neglect our shadow, because our shadow is going to be in the middle of those two things too. So we want to duplicate after the shadow as well. We're going to assess where this shadow is. So this is where we're going to have to, as I say, eyeball it. We're going to have to do it visually. But bearing in mind that the shadow is always going to be wrapped around the point of contact on the ground, we can now move this in, bearing in mind also that compared with the circular one on frame 1, we now got a narrower one because it's stretching. So the width is narrower. So this shadow is actually going to get smaller. And again, whoops, again, if you imagine the diagonal lines coming down to the tangents and projecting down to about there, I think that's about right. All right. And yeah, it's pretty central. So I'm going to accept that. Now if we scrub, you can see the shadow is moving as well. All right. So we've done key 1. I'm talking about the shadow now. Key 1, breakdown 7, key 9. See how the shadow's moving in accordance with the ball. All right, good. So we've got our drawing. Look at our chart. 1, 7, 9. So now we've got to do the next one halfway between 1 and 7, which is 5. Okay. So again, I'm going to go to select the ball. Now remember, because we're working with shadows and balls at the same time or separately, you've got to always remember to go back to the layer that you're working with. And this time we want the ball layer. So here we are, frame 1 of the ball. I'm going to go add drawing after, duplicate after. And again, we've created another one. Let's see if this allows me to erase. No, it doesn't look like it is. So I'm just going to have to live with this for some reason. Some software is quirky, guys. And I don't know what's going wrong, but we'll just have to leave it like that. If I turn the onion skin off, we can see 3, but it's got a circle around it. It shouldn't really. That 1 is confusing. I don't know why that number is staying there. But anyway, let's not worry about it because the numbers are something we can erase later anyway for our test, for our final render. But so what we're looking at now, we've got the ball on 1 and we've got the ball on 7. So we need to move that ball halfway between 1 and 7. So onion skin on. So here we can see 1 and here we can see 7. So now we're going to use the lasso tool to select the ball, drag it down till it comes to that line on 5. See that line on 5? I put a dotted line across so you can line up on it much easier. And now we kind of got to assess how much are we going to distort this ball. I'm going to move the pivot point to the center because it makes life easier. We do that. So we see the width on 1 is there and the width on 7 is there. So we want kind of be halfway between those two. And if we're slipped over there, if we are halfway, if we're going in a little bit, the volume of the ball will never change. So we have to extend the height of it a little bit. All right. And that gives us something like that. Let's try that. So that means if we scrub, see how it's changing shape? It's moving kind of pretty cool there. So I'm happy with that on 3. And yeah, I'm happy with that. So now we've got to do the same with the shadow. We've got to remember, switch layers, go to shadow, add duplicate after. And on our shadow layer, again, we can see 1 and 7. So we're going to go halfway between, see that's 7. Sorry, that's 5. That's 1, that's 5. So we're going to go halfway between them as best we can. Make sure you've got top and bottom halfway. And again, if we look at our scrubbing, we can see that 1, 3, 5. Sorry, this is 5. I said 3. I got the numbering wrong. It's 5. I'm not even looking at my own charts now. So on the ball, this is 5. Yeah, we haven't done 3 yet. So again, sorry, 1, 5, 7. All right, 1, 5, 7, because we're doing a slowing out. 1, 5, 7, and you can see the shadow 1, 5, 7, 1, 5, 7 is doing the same thing. The shadow is moving with the ball, which is what we want, and we're looking good. All right, so forgive me for the numbering confusion there, but we now have 1 on the chart here, 5, 7, and 9. So we want to go between 1 and 5, which is 3. So once more, we're going to go to our ball 1. We're going to duplicate after, which is this one. I'm going to try to erase that. No, that's not erasing, but I'm going to call it 3 anyway, because that's the number it is. And again, we're going to use the lasso tool and drag this down so that this center point, and I'm going to move the pivot point over it. Hard to see, but I'm guessing it's about there. And again, we kind of just got to guess. So it's a very slight squashing in and a very slight squashing out there. And that should give us a nice curve on the outsides of those, like that. Let's double check it. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. See how it's going? So see how they're closer together at the top? And that takes us down to 9, which is the squash on the bottom. So we're learning that at the top of a position, the ball is in its perfect spherical shape. But then as it starts to move down, it's starting to stretch. And then it hits the ground, it squashes because it hits the hard surface of the ground. At the same time, we have our shadows, and for some reason we didn't do a shadow on 9. That's very weird, guys. Okay, so I'm going to put a shadow in 9 so that we've got clarity there. So I'm just making sure that we've got the shadows in the right positions. 3. Oh, we didn't do 3 on the shadow. That's right. So now we do the shadow. So I'm selecting frame 1 of shadow because we've got to do 3 now. We've got 5 on shadow. We've got to do 3. So I'm going to go select 1 on shadow, duplicate after. Now I'm going to select this shadow on 3. And I'm just going to shrink it in halfway between the ones we've already got. See that? Halfway there, click off. Now we've got all the shadows and all the ball. Right, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. And if I take the onion skin off, you'll see it clearer. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Okay, now we're going to do the ball going down. I'll do the ball going up again in a minute. It's got one slight variation to what we're doing, but for now we'll do the ball going down. So now we've got the ball going down. We've got 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Now we've got to put the even in-betweens in. See? 2, 4, 6, 8. So here we go again. Back to the ball, number 1. We've got 1 and 3. We've got to do 2. So I'm going to go add, duplicate after. See if we can erase anything here. Of course not. We can't. So I'm going to draw over it. 2. So this is drawing 2. And we are going to lasso the drawing, and I'm going to move it down to halfway between, I'm guessing now because I haven't done horizontal lines for the even numbers, but it's halfway. And remember to keep it on that path of action as well, but that's approximately halfway. Just a tiny little squeeze in there and a tiny little stretch up there. That should do it. So again, let's check it. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it's not doing anything weird, so that's what we want. And now we have to do the shadow. So again, I'm going to select shadow 1, duplicate after, and lasso this. Oh, onion skin. I was looking for the other shadows. I couldn't see them. So I didn't have the onion skin on. So here, we've got to get between those two. This gets tighter and tighter at this point. So we're going between those two, and that's pretty good. I think that's pretty accurate. So again, ball and shadow, 1, 2, 3. See that? Looking good. And then we've got 1, 2, 3. Now we've got to do 4 between 3 and 5. So we're going to go to 1. There's 3 and there's 5. So I'm going to select ball 3. See, I'm on ball layer 3. I'm going to go add, duplicate after. So now we have to erase that and number it 4 so we don't get confused later. Make sure you do your numbering first because it's easy to get confused. And then we're going to lasso this one. Again, we're going to drag it down to halfway between 3 and 5. And again, we're going to try and squeeze somewhere in between the two. Like that. Click off. Let's test it. Looks like it's doing the right thing to me. And now we've got to go to shadow 3. Drawing after, duplicate after. Lasso it. And squeeze between those two. See, there we are. In between 3 and 5. And that's just about right. And I'm going to take the onion skin off just to double check. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that looks like it's moving fine to me. So now we're going to go to 5. Going to go to ball 5. Remember to do the ball because we're going to go between 5 and 7. We want to do 6. So we're going to do 6. I'm going to duplicate afterwards. Going to erase the number 5. This is letting me erase everything, so I'm going to call this 6. And now I'm going to duplicate that. I'm going to move the center down halfway between 5 and 7 on the path of action. I'm going to put onion skin on, would help. And find the halfway positions. That feels like it's going just slightly left there. And we're going to, whoops. And then because we narrowed it, we have to stretch it too. So I'm kind of eyeballing this. Let's have a look. Yeah, that's looking okay. All right. So we're on 5. We want to do 5 shadow, select it, add drawing, duplicate after, and then I'm going to lasso this, and we want to move the shadow to halfway between those. Click off, onion skin off. Let's have a look. Looking good. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and between 7 and 9 we're going to do 8. Now I'm going to go to the ball layer, click 7. I want to explain something. So if we in between that stretch shape and that squash shape, if we did just like halfway shape wise between the two, it would go very soft. It wouldn't feel like a real snap when it hits the ground. So what we're going to do on this one, we're going to duplicate 7. Duplicate after 7. This time we're just going to take the ball. We're not going to distort it. We're going to keep the same shape, but we're going to line it up with as close as we can to 8. All right, because in fact we could even put a bit more stretch on it to emphasize the stretch. Just trying to line it up visually there, so that when we get to put the onion skin on, so that when we get to 7, 8, 9, see that there's an overlap. We've extended the stretch and we've brought it near to the ground. It's not on the ground, but there is an overlap between 7 here, or rather 8 here. This is 8. I didn't change the number, that's why it's saying 7. So this is 8. Didn't do what I'm telling you to do, which is put the number in first. So 7, 8, 9. Okay, so there's an overlap between this one on 8 and that one on 9. That overlap gives a sense of contact between the shapes for our brain. Our brain needs those contact points. Anything that overlaps gives us a flowing contact between the two. But when it hits the ground, bam, if I turn the onion skin off, you'll see what I mean. When it hits the ground, bam, there's much more of a contact, sense of hit contact there that you want, all right? So that's the one exception where we don't do a logical in-between. Now, we have to go back to our shadow now and work with that. So I'm going to select shadow 7, going to add duplicate drawing after, which gives us 8. And because we narrowed this, we've got to narrow the shadow. Remember, it's not a logical in-between. We weren't in-betweening it, so we're going to narrow the shadow. I'm going to slightly slide it over a little bit there. But basically, I've narrowed the shadow there. So let's check that out. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Like that. All right. Now, if I remove the guide completely and we play it, it's going to only, remember, it's only coming down, so it's going to repeat, but you get a sense of what's going on there. And actually I can make it easier for you if we stop the playing and we go to frame 9 here and we change this to frame 9. This is where we can control what the camera's seeing when it's doing the playback. We won't have, there you go. So can you get a sense that we're slowing out and hitting the ground hard? All right. Okay, so that is bringing the ball down. It got a little bit complicated, and I apologize for the numbering, and I still don't know what's happening in the software with that numbering, and I hope I can erase them all afterwards. But this will give you a sense of what is happening in terms of slowing out from the top position to the ground position. Once you've done that, let's start looking at how to bring it up back to the first position again so we can complete the cycle. Okay, so I'm going to stop that, let you catch up on that a little bit, and then we'll go into the second section, which is coming from 9 and going back up to 1 again. Okay, so now we have our, as we said before, 1 through 9. Now we want to bring it up again. We can't just reverse it like this. We could technically, if any of you guys just want to do copy paste, you can do it. But a word of caution, when we're looking at going from 9 back to 1 on the chart on the right, notice one thing about it. Notice that there's no 10. All right. It goes from 9 to 11. That's because we want a really solid jump back up. And to get that impact on the ground, rather than in between it, which will soften the action, we want it to jump up halfway up again to get a sense of real snap to the bounce. So everything else you can duplicate across. If that's your way of doing things, duplicate those drawings across and you can do it. But I'm going to work through manually because I prefer it that way. It gets less complicated. If you're a technical person, it's going to be easy for you to duplicate and reverse it that way. Cut and paste in reverse. But for those of you, including me, which kind of get confused by doing that, I'm going to manually go back up. So our first position, we're going to go from 9 from 11 through 11 to 1. Breakdown drawing is 11. However, if we look at our animation, our timeline, we actually haven't got a 1 to go to. It's back here, but we can't see it. So we're going to duplicate number 1 by going duplicate after, and then select that one and use this up here on the timeline at the top, shift it along to the end, to as far as it goes, and do the same with the shadow. Duplicate after, take the duplicate, move it along to the end. So now if we scrub, you can see we've got a 1, we've got a 9 and a 1. We know where we're coming from, we know where we're going to. Now at the end we'll delete that 1, those 2 frames there, so we get no pause there. Although I'm going to show you something else. By leaving them there we might get a better pause there, but let's talk about that in a minute. So we're going from 9 to 1, so we want to do 11. So here we go, ball, add drawing, duplicate after, and I'm going to try to erase that. Yep, that's working fine. So I'm going to erase that and number it 11 in parentheses. So we've got 11, we've duplicated 11. So what we're going to do now is we're going to select it. We're going to move this up to that point, and then we're going to move that center point to there, and then I'm going to distort it that way and that way. And again, this is a kind of visual thing you're going to have to work with. Try to get a sense of the volume of that matching the volume of this, and this feels a little bit big to me, but I think that should be okay. All right, so we go from 9, 11 back to 1. See that? Now the same thing happens with the shadow. So we're going to select 9 shadow, we're going to duplicate after, we're going to lasso it, and again it's gone to a narrow, so the shadow is going to be pretty narrow on the ground. So let's just try and adjust that. To be honest, anything remotely close is going to be fine here, because there's such a dramatic change that we can work with that. So there we go. See, the shadow is wide there on the ground, very narrow there, and widens out to number 1. So we're going in the right direction. All right. So, and remember, no number 10. You don't have to do a number 10 here, but you do need to put the others in. So to do that, the other even numbers, so to do that, we've got to go to 13. 11 to 1, the halfway is 13. So we're going to select 11, 9, 11, go to the ball, duplicate after, erase the number, call it 13, and select the ball. We're going to move it up to that position, which is the line, horizontal line for 13, and 5 if you want. And notice now that we need to, I'm going to put onion skin on. There's the shape of the preceding one. We need to widen it a little bit and squash this down a little bit, because we're beginning to return to a normal shape. So I'm going to adjust that, make sure the center is on the path of action and on the line of 13 here, which is pretty much there. Double check it. Looks good to me. And then we're going to do the same for the shadow. So we're going to select 11 shadow, duplicate after. Now the shadow is going to be just the basic in between. So I'm going to select the shadow, and there's the one it's going to, just there. So we want it halfway to there, which is kind of going to be round about there. Keeps jumping out of place. Okay, so now take the onion skin off, just double check this. So the shadow's doing the right thing, the ball's doing the right thing, looking good. All right, so 13, we got 13, now we got to do 15 to 1. All right, so 13, select 13 ball, duplicate after, going to change the number to 15. so we don't get confused again. And I'm going to select the ball, I'm going to move it up to that center position, put the onion skin on so I can see where the other one is, and I'm going to come out a little on that, come down a little on that, make sure the center's all lined up naturally, do a quick test. Yeah, that looks good to me. And do the same for the shadow. So select the shadow 13, duplicate after, select this, and go halfway. It's all a little bit of juggling, but trust me, it will be good when it works. So there we go, onion skin off. Let's look at that. Not sure the shadows are working. That one goes in. Oh, I see what I did. I did the shadow wrong. That's why it's good to scrub, guys. I took the shadow the wrong way. I took it inward, and I'm going to put onion skin on. So it's actually going outwards to the next one. So there's 13, 15, 1. Yeah. So it's going on the shadow, it's coming from there. And it's going to there, so we need to stretch it out the other way. So we need to go out to there, something like that. Just juggle it, make sure it's central. Now scrub it again, onion skin off. So it's going out, out, out. No, I'm still wrong. So 13 is there. Huh. Okay, 15, I got the wrong one. 15, onion skin on. 15 is going to be out there. Now let's check it. I think that's better. Onion skin off. There's a little bit of wobbling going on there. I'm not sure what that is. That is on 15. Oh, I see. So I just got to lift it up a little bit. Let's try that. That's better. All right. So now we've got 15, 9, 11, 13, 15, and 1. So now we put the even numbers in. Remember, no number 10. So we're going to go to 11 on the ball. See 11 because we got the number there, and we're going to duplicate afterwards. We're going to call that 12. We're going to select the ball, put onion skin on so we can see what we're doing. I'm going to move it to halfway. And again, we want to just take it out a little bit and then in a little bit from top to bottom. Out in the width and down on the top and bottom. So let's look at that. Yep, it looks like it's going over slightly. So I'm going to, seems to have shifted over. That's why scrubbing up here is imperative, guys, to make sure there's nothing weird going on. So yeah, that's good for me. So 13, 14, 12, 13, 12. So we've got to do 12 on the shadow. So I'm going to select 11 on the shadow, duplicate afterwards, and select all. And we've got to go halfway between those two. So we're going to go pretty close to halfway between the two. Scrub again. Yeah, it's going in the right direction. Good. So we got 12. Now to 13. We're going to do 14 between 13 and 15. So we're going to go select the ball on 13. Duplicate after. Renumber so we don't get confused. I'm going to call it 14. Select the ball. Onion skins on. Select the ball, move it up halfway. Just ease out and ease down. Scrub it to test. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, so we want to go 13 on the shadow. Duplicate after. Select the shadow. Go halfway, which is pretty much that, I think. Check the scrubbing on that. That 15 is really annoying. Shadow 12, 13, 14, and 15's back in. 15 should be way out. So I'm going to, hopefully you have better luck than I am with this, but 15's going to be out there somewhere. Let's try that again. Yeah, there we go. For some reason that 15 was plaguing me. Alright, so we've got 15, 14, 15. Now we just got to do 16 back to 1. So I'm going to go to ball 15, duplicate after, erase the number, call it 16, and then select the eyeball, move the center up halfway between 15 and 1. Move that out, move that in. Looks pretty good. Let's have a look. Yeah, that looks good. So again, I'm going to do the same thing on 15 shadow. It's pretty easy to see, so I'm going to duplicate after. And on that one, we're just going to do a little adjustment between the last two, like that. That looks pretty accurate to me, so let's just try it. Yeah, that looks good. Let's turn the onion skin off to make sure that we're doing okay. Yeah, seems to be working. And now what I'm going to do is, because we're now on frame, we're basically on frame 17, I'm going to change this up to 17 because we got the extra one here and we got one there. Now normally what we'd do, and why don't I just see if I can, well, it doesn't matter. So let's just play. So there's a jump in it there for some reason. So let's stop. Maybe it's 16. There we go. Yeah, I put the wrong number for the end frame. So if you look, the ground shadow is working fine. The ball is hitting the ground hard and snapping back up, and it's slowing in and slowing out at the very top, which is exactly what we want. So now we've animated our ball slowing out, coming down, slowing in, going up. We've got all the right distortions. We've got the shadows and everything. So I am happy with that. So I'm going to hit save to make sure we don't lose what we've done. And got to do the final touch-ups now, which is really just working with the shadow. We've got to do the shadow on the ground. We're going to pick the black, the paint bucket, and just going to go through and fill the shadow in all the way through. Trust me, if you'd filled it in before, it would have been a heck of a hard job to find the in-betweens, because the black would cover up everything that you were trying to see through. It would be a pain. So that's why I said animate just the outline and then come back later and fill it in like this. Now there's one more thing I want you to consider, is that if we play that again, see how the shadow's working kind of nicely there, but it's very dominant. It's a very dominant shadow. So what we're going to do is we're going to stop it. I'm going to go back to the first frame, and I'm going to put transparency on the shadow. So go to the shadow layer and then drag it to the left, and you get, it's up to you what degree of shadow. Look at the shadow on the ball and try to get into that same ballpark. I'm kind of happy with it being around 39-ish. Let's try that. Yeah, now it's not dominating. Now it's not that big black object that's hitting the ground. Now we can also take the guide out. So I'm going to reduce that to 0. If you want to adjust the shadow having done that, maybe just take it down to 30. Something like that. The ball's 100%. The guide, the background's 100%. We can play that. Happy with that. And then the final thing we want to do is erase all those numbers. So I'm going to go to the ball level because that's where the numbers are. I'm not sure why that number 1 is there. It's not erasing. Maybe I put it on the background. If I did, I apologize. Somehow I put that number on the background. I don't know how we did that. Yeah, so put that down to a learning experience. But for some reason, I try and find out where that is. It looks like, because it's held on, it looks like it's on the background. It's there on every single one. So somehow, make sure you don't do it. Somehow it's maybe on the background. Let's take the background off and see if it disappears. No, it's not on the background layer. Let's see if it's on... It's not on that layer. Is it on the shadow? Oh, it's on the shadow layer for some reason. Okay, so we can work with that. So let's go to the shadow layer. That's the good thing about digital, because there we go. I don't know how it got onto the shadow layer. Have no idea. Maybe I wrote it on that layer at the very beginning and it duplicated it all the way through. But we have ways of fixing it. So here we go. And a bit laborious, but trust me, if you were hand drawing this and having to hand paint them, you'd be doing it 10 times as long to do all the animation, to do all the coloring, the shadowing, the highlights, everything would be a nightmare. So we got away with... Rough Animator is incredibly good. I have to say, it's the nearest thing I've got to traditional software, traditional paper and pencil technology, but it does save a lot of time and it's easy to demonstrate. Once you get your head round it, you're going to struggle a little bit, I'm sure, but once you get your head round it, I'm sure this is going to be good. All right, so there we go. We've got all our numbers off. We've got our ball bouncing up and down. I forgot one more thing. All right, so I'm going to stop it. I'm going to go back to the ball level. I'm going to pick black. I'm going to reduce the brush size right down because I want it to be pretty small. And I'm going to black out the little dots in the middle, because we don't want to see them now. We've done our thing. Maybe just a little bit larger brush size. Yeah, because we don't want to see that guide mark in the middle. It's good to have it while you're working, but remember, with animation, it's what ends up on the screen. It's not how you get up there. So if things are messy, there's little guidelines. If there's things on your layers while you're working, even if you're working in color, it doesn't matter if they're showing up, as long as you do what I'm doing right now, is remove them before you do the final render. So it doesn't take long to do this. It's frustrating when you really just want to get it finished and you've got to do these little things, but trust me, the final effect will look so much better by just paying attention to these little details and not have any excuses for people to say, oh, you didn't do that, because they will. Trust me, they will. And there we go. There's our finished eyeball bouncing up and down. Nice little snap to the ground, and the shadow's working well in relation to it, gives it contact with the ground, and the slowing in and slowing out is pretty apparent. Okay. All right, so I think we're good. Let me just stop it, frame one. Now the only thing we got to do now is duplicate it a few times for when we render it out. So I'm just going to tidy up now. Shorten this down to just the length we want. There we are, up to there. And then I'm going to see Edit Multiple, click on that. I'm going to hit Edit Multiple. I'm going to pull this box out to cover everything, and then we're going to duplicate after, click, and there we go, we add another layer, duplicate after, and then we have another cycle, not a layer, another cycle. I'm going to do it about 6 times. And now I'm just going to play it just to make sure nothing weird is going on. Nothing weird is going on, so I'm going to stop it. I'm going to save it because we're happy with that. And then I'm going to export QuickTime Video. I'm going to call it Demo 1. Sorry, Demo 3. I want Demo 3 Animation. I keep it the same file name. Into my eyeball art file and save. And just as I did at the beginning, here again is our final thing. Yep, looking good. So there we go, our bouncing ball, bouncing 6 times. Looking good. All right. So it's totally over to you guys. Come up with your own images, come up with your own backgrounds, work through the principles. If you get really stuck, you don't have to put the shadow on, but if you can put the shadow on, that's even better. Okay. So good luck.